All right, hopefully you enjoyed that time lapse of the pruning in this garden. I'm going to do some pruning here over the next day. I mentioned in some prior videos, I'm not a huge fan of pruning in the fall because it does stimulate growth, and farther south where I am, we can still have a pretty mild winter. With that said, no matter where you live, a little light pruning in the fall is not a bad idea, especially on some of these taller bushes. You can see the time lapse we took down this bed, and I'll show you these 3 roses in front have been done, but not that one in the back. So no matter where you live, if you've got some roses, especially over 4 or 5 feet, not a bad idea to prune them down lightly in the fall. And the whole idea is a real tall rose will rock back and forth in the winter winds, and those longer canes could break in ice storms. So it's not a bad idea to do some light pruning. If you live pretty far north, don't get too cute with your pruning. Don't prune really hard. Really, no matter where you live, just do a light one. The reason for that is you still want a lot of canes left. So if you have a harsh winter and the bush dies back, it always starts from the tips down to the bud unit itself. So if you leave a real wide margin of error, that will help you if the winter is harsh. So that is one tip. Make sure it's a light pruning. And in fact, up north, my roses didn't get much taller than 3 or 4 feet anyway, because they were growing from little stubs in the spring. So I don't want to say I never pruned in the fall, but I don't recall doing it much. I'm only doing it here because they're 7 feet plus in some instances. So since we're talking about pruning, you probably saw the shirt I was wearing. You want to wear long sleeve. You want to have some of these gloves that are good. Do I still get prickled with some thorns? Yes, but for the most part, these gloves I got on Amazon. I think it's goat skin, I can't remember. It's something I bought on Roast Mania as well. Special gloves so that most of the thorns do not get you. So you want good gloves, good long sleeve is important to have. A good container to put them into. One of the reasons why I'm doing it now, our town pickup for debris is in the next day. So I really want to get these down to the curb, because with these long canes, it's hard to put them in my little smaller containers. This is an old garbage can that we used to have before the town switched to the kind that could be picked up automated. So I kept this for yard waste. And since we're talking about pruning and safety, again, gloves, long sleeves, I wore glasses on purpose so you could see that you should have some eye protection. A good pair of pruners is good. Unfortunately, I lost my good pair somewhere in the garden. I don't know if it accidentally ended up in the rubbish vegetation going to the dump or what. So I got this cheaper pair of Fiskars from Home Depot or Lowe's. I need to get the I can't remember the brand that's really good, but I had it and I don't have it anymore. I must have accidentally gotten rid of it. Since we're talking about pruning, we mentioned a light pruning in the fall for prevention of the rose breaking in ice or wind. In the spring, you prune away dead stuff and to stimulate growth. But really, you can prune any time lightly certain things, 2 things. One, canes that cross. So I kept this one. Here's the main cane, and look how it's all crossed, and see right here it's crossing. That's just going to rub. I don't know if it's happened yet. Might be able to barely see down there. It's hard to see, it's not focusing. But these canes will rub and it'll cause injury. So any cross canes, and that's what I mean by that. You've got one cane going here, one cane going there. And anything dead, this is a dead cane here, probably some type of canker. And that you can see it's green here, so it's good. But that's progressing down the cane itself. And you can see the pith, the inside of it is brown. So that's dying as well. So anytime you have cross canes or canes that have some canker and that are dying down the cane itself, prune away dead. So prune away dead, prune away cross canes, and you should be good. This is a pretty short video. I'll wrap things up here. It's getting toward dark, so I want to get hustling. Last thing I want to show you, just I keep talking about, here in the south we keep growing. I'm trying to find an example. Here's some new growth. Pardon the black spot, but look at this new growth on top of these bushes. And we had a hard freeze this morning, so that's why it's kind of tricky here in the south. I really try to wait until we have a hard freeze, and really you should do that anyway. But pruning does stimulate growth, so you'll probably notice some new growth, especially since we'll be in the 60s here coming up. And see if I can find another example. Again, here's some fresh new growth from mainly the black spot dropping so many leaves. It kind of stimulates the bush to grow because you're losing leaves, so it wants to generate new ones. The other example of that, sometimes people get worried about pruning. I mentioned you don't want to hack them in the fall because you want some margin for dieback if the winter is harsh. At the other end of the spectrum, don't get too worried about them, especially come springtime, because they come back. This is the tallest rose, Marlin's Day. This was pruned in the late summer, and that stimulated it to grow up above 8 feet. It's hard to see in the background, but these canes go well up into the sky. So pruning is good for shaping the bush, cutting out disease or cross canes, preventing issues with ice and wind, but also eventually stimulating growth. So it's not a bad thing to do some pruning throughout the year. And the point of this video was to focus on the fall pruning, which prevents winter injury from wind and ice. Comment below, how do you do things in your neck of the woods? As you comment, let us know where you live. Like I said, when I lived in upstate New York, it was very rare, if at all, did I do a fall pruning because the bushes just weren't tall enough. And with them dying almost all the way to the ground, I wanted as much margin for error as I could. For me, I mean, you can see this bush slanted. This is from Hurricane Isaias this past summer. I've done some pruning in September before Hurricane Florence. I took all these bushes down to 2 feet. You can see a lot of my bushes are knocked over. That's from the hurricanes we get here often in eastern North Carolina that occur either right over us or just to the east. Another example of that, this is Mr. Lincoln. It has toppled over. That was during Isaias. It fell over during Florence as well. But I'll just prune that up a little bit and just pretty much let it be. It'll correct itself and grow straight, but I will offer some support here as I'm doing some shaping with the pruning. So that's it. Next time you see this garden, most of the taller roses will be pruned. These smaller ones I'm just going to leave alone. I'm only just taking the top maybe 25% off these tall ones throughout the garden. And I just got an update from UPS. My roses should be here tomorrow from Palatine. So the bag of Pro Mix is in the garage. My pots are ready. Get those potted up, and I'll tell you why I'm potting my roses in the fall as opposed to planting them in the ground. We'll go over that in the next video. Hope all is well. Thanks for the subscribers. One quick thing I forgot to mention, you might have seen me hold up a yardstick. This is actually a snow stick. It measures up to 40 inches. I use this more in the spring when I don't really want to prune below 3 feet, so 36 inches. There's no way I was anywhere close to that. I want to give you some reference for how tall these roses are even after pruning them. So this is Randy Scott after it's been pruned back. And you can see that's 40 inches and it's well above that. So I just brought it out. I didn't know how low I was going to go, but I do use this as a guide. And what I'll usually do is, like in this case, that's closer to 35, 36 inches. If I want to prune to that mark, especially in the spring, I'll prune 1 or 2 canes, and then I have a reference. So I know that this is the height I want, then I cut all the other ones at that height. So I do use that as a reference. But here in the fall, really highlight a light pruning. And you can see these roses are between 4 and 5 feet tall still, taking them down from 7 or 8. All right, that's it. I just wanted to explain why I had a yardstick out there in the garden.